When you've resolved the root cause, something that would normally trigger that emotion, it will come and go and it's gone. It's not going to permeate and stay with you. That's when you know you've released the root cause.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Chris Salem, I am so happy that you joined me here today on Selling with Social, my friend. Thank you very much for being part of the program with me today.
Mario, it's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I met you for the first time actually not too long ago, and it was with Gerhard Schwartner, and I was really impressed with the mindset and the information that you were sharing on Success Path. So I'm excited to have you on today's show because we're going to talk a little bit about that. But look about your background. You're a speaker. You're an author. You have your own cool radio show host as a radio show. So that's really cool. I'm impressed and excited. But one of the books that you authored was Master the Inner Critic. Resolve the root cause, create prosperity.
Correct.
And today's show is going to be about that particular topic. And I'm really excited about that. So did I miss anything in terms of your background, Chris?
You nailed it. You're being perfect, everything that I do.
Awesome. Well, listen, before we get started, I always love asking all of my guests a question, and that is, tell us something that we wouldn't know by looking at your social profiles.
Well,
something about you.
This is what's amazing. You know, everybody that knows me from social media knows that I provide quality content, both personal development as well as authentic leadership or things that really make people feel good when they wake up in the morning, whether that's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. They know me as the kind of the pickup guy, the guy that just makes me feel good in the morning, get ready, motivated to start my day, whether if I woke up feeling not good. But something I don't, I guess, put out there is that, and I guess this goes back to my days when I was going through this process that we'll talk about a little later, is what they don't know about me is I love hard music. I love hard rock and heavy metal. And it's something I don't publicize, but I'm 50 years old and I'm a headbanger. You know, that I always will be. And when I tell people that, they're like, wait a minute, you're a polished guy, you know, you dress well and you don't have any tattoos. I mean, how can you? But it's just music. I love the energy and I've always been high energy. So it's something that's been part of me my whole life.
So for those of you that can't see Chris who are listening in, I can see Chris and we've got nice hair. We've got it all polished. We've got the right look, business professional, speaker. And then you throw us a loop saying you love hard.
Well,
is it heavy metal?
Only the people closest to me know that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Like I would never have guessed that about you. This is what I love about asking that particular question because the things that you would never have guessed, they come out. Fantastic. Well, listen. You and I were with Gerhard. We had some great discussions and you talked a lot about the inner self, the inner critic, and developing the right type of growth mindset. And our listeners, as you know, on Selling with Social, we've got sales, we've got marketers, we've got sales enablement folks. And each person that is joining this podcast is always looking how to grow and how to be better, whether it's in sales, personal development, growth development, mindset. So I want you to take us through a little bit of the journey. First of all, Master the Inner Critic. What was the inspiration of this book? And I think the listeners are going to love the story behind this and how you came up with the book here.
Yeah, I mean, this was a book that I should have put out many years ago. This should have come out back in the mid 90s, late 90s. It was almost 20 years ago. So, I mean, I can't believe we're almost like 18 years removed from 2000. But it was around that time frame I went through this process. And what it was that at the time I had gone through my teenage years, my college years, my early adulthood from up until I was 30, a very, very angry individual. And I engaged in certain addictive behaviors and habits that did not serve me well, both personally and professionally, and got me into a lot of trouble. Even while I was able to manage things, because I had a good work ethic, I always felt that I was the victim. I always felt that, when things happened that, the universe or someone or a group of people were out to get me. And it wasn't until I went through this process that I'm happy to talk about that I was able to take ownership that I was responsible for what had happened, even whether if it was indirect or direct, and that it was up to me to solve the problem, to find the solution inside me, not outside for someone to help me.
So walk me through this. You went through this process. You were angry at the world. You said you engaged in a bunch of different addictive behaviors. I think a lot of us can relate. We've all have past, right? We all have challenges. We've all grown up with certain situations that some of our listeners are happy about. Some of them are not so happy about, right? And we all have had things that we struggle with and we deal with. So do you mind if I ask, what
Sure.
was it? What is the thing that made you angry? And how does that relate to present day business?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the anger at the time developed when I was 14 years old going forward up till I was 30. So that was that 16-year period that I experienced this anger. At the time, I didn't know where the anger came from. I just thought it was part of, puberty and growing up, and, I was an aggressive male, competitive, and I thought it just went along with the package. But this anger was very overt. Like I said, I engaged in a lot of activities that were inappropriate, really hurt a lot of people, hurt myself. And this tied back at the time when I was able to realize it back to these unresolved issues with my father. And at the time growing up, my father wasn't really present in my life. He was there, but not really emotionally and mentally there at all. So we didn't have a connection. So I grew up, directionless, not knowing who I was and how to be a man and how to act like a man. And, a lot of the things that he did were not going to be good things, that I could carry on into my adulthood that would make me a good husband, a good father, and a good person to work with. So That's where it all started, where I had to take ownership and say, I got to put this behind me because my business, my personal life, my relationships, and my health, my wellness depend upon it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to some of the things that you stated, which is you had an absent parent or a parent that was there, but really not there. Right. And in some cases, I'm a father of two. I've got a 7-year-old and I got a 3-year-old. And, for my listeners know that I'm very raw and unfiltered and I'm very truthful. But, one of the things that has more recently started happening with my own children is my son is saying, hey, Dad, my 7-year-old is saying, Dad, will you play with us because you didn't play with us yesterday? And I finally, a couple of weeks ago, or something like that, I said to him, mijo, son, because we're Latin. And I said, you never have to say because. Don't ever say because. You don't have to have a because to ask me to play with you. And I think that was an important wake up call for me because he's trying to justify why I should spend time with him. And it's not that I don't spend time, it's that I'm very consumed. I work from home. We're a completely virtual environment. So they see me here 24 hours a day, right, in the home. And every time I walk out in the middle of the day, it's like playtime, right? They want to see me. They want to play. And unfortunately, it's still the work hour. So if I was at the office, they wouldn't see me, right? So that exacerbates the issue. And then the other part is no doubt about it. Without a doubt, this device that I'm holding up in my hand right here, unfortunately, many of us have become addicted to it, right?
Believe me, yeah, absolutely.
So as I check it, I'm hanging out with the children and they're saying to me, Dad, get off your phone. Dad, get off your phone. Dad, play with us. And that becomes a real big problem. And so it's something that I'm working on, right? To be a father that is not emotionally disconnected and is physically here, but not emotionally there, right? And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that. And if you really take a step back and think about the amount of time that you're spending with your children, or are you giving them scenarios that say, children, do you want this or do you want this? Because if you want this, that means daddy's not here or mommy's not here. But if you want this, that means I can be here. And then they say, of course, they're going to say, I want the things. And then you're like, okay, that justifies for me not to be there. But there's effects that happen. And, this is a sales show. This is a marketing show. But this is also a personal growth development show. And I want you to walk us through okay, so that was the inspiration. You wrote the book. Why? What did it do for you?
I wrote the book because, I had gone through this process, which I'm happy to discuss if you like me to talk to the listeners about it, which I'll go into. But I wanted to be able to point this out because I saw this being a problem in many people's lives. Whether in their personal lives and in their business. And a lot of times in business, why they would get stuck or weren't able to get to the next plateau was because there was an unresolved mindset barrier or limited belief in the subconscious mindset. That's why they couldn't identify there was a problem, because it's not consciously known. It's subconsciously known. So in this case, the subconscious mindset and the conscious mindset were not in sync. So they weren't to identify where the problem was. And what you just talked about with, hey, I can give my kids something to occupy them, and that kind of removes me so I can go back and do what I got to do. Now, is there anything necessarily bad with that? Well, not really, but when you think about it, it could. Because down the road, that child can internalize that, not even knowing it was a problem to him or her. And it could come out in many different ways to affect their health, their wellness, relationships, as well as their business. You really can't tell. But the whole idea is to be conscious of that right now, because if we're able to establish certain things that are going to be good for our children, that's going to help them to grow up in a much more balanced, healthy way. So it offsets things that say that I went through and perhaps you went through that we didn't get from our parents, and it's never going to be perfect. We can't be perfect, and you got to do the best you can, but just being conscious to the fact that you just brought that up. Happy to talk about the process too, if you want me to.
Well, I want to touch on this
Sure.
particular topic, and maybe we can weave the process inside of there. But the book is titled Master Your Inner Critic. What is the inner critic? How does it stop you? How does it hold you back? How does it help you?
Well, the inner critic is going to contain both a positive and negative voice. And because the negativity is a low vibrational energy, many people tend to gravitate towards the negative because it's easier to adapt. It doesn't require a lot of work. Positive vibrations vibrate at a higher level, so it requires some work. That's why people who meditate, people that are practice being in the moment and establish very firm disciplines and habits tend to be vibrating at a higher vibrational level, but it requires work. Whereas negative vibrations don't require much. That's why you're going to have both. And when you listen to the inner critic, a lot of times it's going back to the subconscious mindset, and it's reinforcing whatever that negative emotion is that's tied to the root cause. So the root cause could be your dad, it could be your mom, it could be some other authoritative figure that had influence over you early. That negative emotion could be anger, whether if it's passive or overt. It can be jealousy, envy, shame, guilt, or any combination thereof. It recreates things in our business, our wellness, and our relationships where we don't even realize that we have a part in it. We keep attracting these things to reinforce that emotion.
Gotcha. And so when you think about the inner critic, you said it could help us or it could hinder us.
Yes.
It's both positive, it's both negative. Let's talk a little bit about in the world of business professionals, salespeople, marketers, people who are under a lot of stress to deliver, right? Deliver a number, to deliver revenue back to the organization. What are some of the things that we as business professionals go through that would be the negative inner critic, if you would? Probably the lines of questioning, things we might say as an example.
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter if somebody's really successful. Could they get to the next level? Yes, but something is preventing them from getting there. And, a lot of times it's that negative inner critic that's saying, okay, this is the limit for you. And that ties back to the root cause. Perhaps that's something that was said years ago. So I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman that I coached about a year and a half ago that was a six-figure earner, did six-figure deals and was successful, had a wonderful family. He came from a wonderful family, no specific problems growing up. But during this process, when we got him to identify where the problem could be at the subconscious mindset, I remember him telling me, he goes, I remember when I was a kid playing baseball, and when I would be in a particular situation where maybe there was two men on, I'm at bat, the tying run or the winning run's there, it's up to me. And I remember my dad behind the backstop telling me, widen your stance, you're not holding the bat right, come on, you can do this, but just kind of correcting him. And it was nothing major, but what ended up happening was that had an effect indirectly in the subconscious mindset. So when he was faced with a task that was considered very difficult to achieve, he would freeze at that level because it would go back to that experience, which he was not aware of in the subconscious mindset that held him back. The root cause was his father that he had passive anger towards, not overt, and it wasn't like he was angry, but didn't even realize it. So that's an example of something minor that could have an effect on what you do in your business life. And this could also apply to people that are overweight or have strained relationships, whether personally or in business. Same thing.
So that's what we talk about as kind of like the self-limiting belief system, right? Where you've got, in childhood, you've got the disapproving parent as an example. And then all of a sudden your limiting belief is really, I'm not worthy. I can't do this, or I won't be able to do this, or I can't accomplish it, or I'm not going to be ever good enough. And then what it creates in the adulthood is, in the example that you gave, was maybe the lower confidence or maybe the overly sensitivity to what others may think, right?
Yes. And like I said, in this case, this was to the outside, this guy had it made. I mean, he was a top earner. He produced. He had, high confidence, but it reached a point where he wasn't able to get to that next level because of that story I just told you that he was completely oblivious to until he went through this process. He didn't realize that something like that would have had an effect on this particular situation. This was important to him, and this is where it was playing out in his life. Like I said, it could play out differently for somebody else in a different area.
Is this now a good time to kind of talk through the process that you were referring to earlier?
Here's the process that I would tell any sales professional, marketer, online, offline, B2B, B2C, whatever the case may be, is that you don't need to figure out what the problem is right from the bat. You just have to be aware that you're not where you want to be, or that you're not settling for mediocrity, that you're capable of more. Now, if you're comfortable where you are, that's a different story. But if you feel like something is like just not where I want to be professionally, I'm not where I want to be with my revenue or my sales volume, be aware that is the first step. The next step is to accept where you are and knowing that you are willing to make a commitment to a process that is going to identify what the particular limited belief or problem is at the root level and going through a process. So the process, once you're able to accept it, starts with two things. It starts with a practice of daily meditation. And it can be very simple, just getting into the rhythm of your breathing, learning how to be in the moment, not trying to overanalyze or overthink, let the thoughts come and go, and just be there, get into that rhythm of being in the moment, learning to be present as much as possible. Do that for 10, 20 minutes a day, and then immediately write down what comes to mind. Don't analyze it, or don't overanalyze it, overthink it, write it down and write down how you feel. Because in time, you're going to be able to look back at what you wrote down and begin to look at yourself from a third-party perspective as you are somebody else looking at yourself to identify what these feelings are. And when you're in the moment, you're able to offset the fear and the stress from the past, and you're able to offset the anxiety projecting something in the future. And when you have that clarity, once you are able to get really clear, that clarity eventually is going to reveal the root cause from the subconscious mindset to the conscious mindset. So now you'll be able to identify what it is. Next, when you identify the root cause, you have to truly release it. If it's your father, you need to forgive your father for whatever it is, no matter if it was very traumatic or very minor, like the example I gave you. Sometimes the parent might not even realize why you're even apologizing or why you're asking for my forgiveness. Did I do something to you? I didn't realize I hurt you. It doesn't matter how they're going to react because you're forgiving them for you. And then next is to truly know that you've released the negative emotion or emotions tied to it. So I'll give you an example with my anger. If somebody cut me off in traffic going to work 25, 30 years ago, it would throw me off for the whole day. It could throw me off for the weekend, maybe perhaps a whole week. I'd be in a state of anger thinking about that incident. And it wasn't the person that cut me off that made me that mad. It was the trigger that brought me back to the root cause of my father, because when I was angry, acting out on that, I was acting out towards my father. It's the same case here. When you've resolved the root cause, when something that would normally trigger that emotion, it will come and go and it's gone. It's not going to permeate and stay with you. That's when you know you've released the root cause. And when you've done that, by having that clarity, you're able then to eventually you'll find your solution. You'll find who you are, what your purpose is, and adopt the right habits, behaviors, and disciplines that are going to get you to where you want to be, whether it's professionally, with your wellness, or your relationships, or all of the above.
Thank you for that. So what do you think is the fastest way to change how you as an individual feel about yourself and or your success or lack thereof? Is
accepting where you're at and accepting that you're going to commit to a process that's going to take you to your better self, not listening to the false self, which comes from the inner critic or the negative inner critic. Learning how to be more in the moment, present moment, brings clarity. And when you have clarity, you're going to be able to see the problem much clearer. You're going to be able to see greater opportunity around you. You're going to be able to adopt better habits, disciplines, and behaviors that are going to take you where you want to go. And it's going to allow you to be more decisive and take massive action towards whatever specific goal that you're working on. Because again, when you're in the moment, you're not anxious, and that brings procrastination when you're anxious. So the procrastination level will come considerably down. So that keeps you on track to where you want to go.
Yeah. And do you think that the things that you're talking about, can they help build a better workplace culture when you have people who are really limiting this negative self-talk, this negative thought process, this inner critic that holds them back? Can it create a better workplace culture?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not only a better workplace culture, but a better world in general. Because you think about it, you have employees. Let's say you have a business unit. You got it like let's say an operations business unit, and you got 20 people in that business unit. Out of those 20 people, do you think that all 20 are really focused on the 8 hours, 9 hours that they're there? No, I would bet that probably for 2 or 3 hours, they're engaged in what they're doing. The other 5, they're just like on autopilot. They're caught up in the clutter of their mindset and listening to their negative critic, dwelling on the problems, whatever's facing them on Facebook, checking their phone, gabbing around the water cooler. They're not producing the way they should if they were in the moment and focused specifically on each task. And if people are able to concentrate their efforts being focused on what they do best as a business unit, it's going to make the business unit more efficient, makes the company more efficient. It causes a paradigm shift among the whole culture of the company. And obviously that impacts the people that they service and sell to as well.
Yeah. Well, and the subtitle of your book is Resolve the Root Cause, Create Prosperity.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, maybe you can comment on this, but the prosperity isn't just, as business professionals, prosperity isn't just in monetary compensation. We're talking about prosperity in health, in relationships, in the workplace, and maybe physically in monetary compensations. Do you agree with that or not agree?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I have a term that I have trademarked. It's called prospreneur. And it doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur to be a prospreneur, but it's meaning that you're putting your wellness first. And wellness can be the 8 pillars of wellness. That's physical wellness, spiritual wellness, financial wellness, occupational wellness, social wellness, intellectual, environmental, so forth. When you have that in alignment first with your wealth principles, and wealth, again, not just money, it's money, it's serving your purpose, it's having freedom, having that balance is when you can experience true prosperity. And if a company adopts that type of culture, sky's the limit. I mean, the production is going to go through the roof. They're going to produce more. They're going to have higher retention of key employees, a happier workplace, and they're going to have more customers, like I said, more revenue. I mean, this is it's a paradigm shift. And I think it's something that a lot of companies kind of turn their cheek to. And I think it's so vitally important to the bottom line. It's just that, unfortunately, now there isn't enough data to support that. But when you think about it, when you look at individuals that are focused in the moment, they produce at a much higher level than those that don't.
And one of the things that I've always done personally myself, in fact, next week, we at Vengreso, as you know, we're a 100% virtual digital organization. We have nobody in any one location together. And it's interesting because a lot of folk have actually said, hey, that's probably not a good idea. And you probably want to look at how you can bring people together. And I have this thing about me, Chris, and that is, you tell me no, it can't be done. And I'm going to prove to you that it can. it's my inner voice. Tell me no, good. And it means yes.
Nothing wrong with that. We need more people like that, Mario.
Oh, man, thank you. I appreciate that. So one of the things I truly believe in, and again, I'm not the expert here, but I'd love to get your opinion on this in terms of mastering this inner critic. Like, we all have thoughts. And I think the number is like 60,000 thoughts pass through our head per year, right? Of which, if I'm not mistaken, like 80% of that are negative thoughts. I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, it won't work, those types of things. And there's a whole lot of things that contribute to mastering this inner critic, this mindset you've got. But one thing I believe is really important, both professionally as an individual, family-wise, as well as company culture, is learning to celebrate success. And I don't necessarily know if you touch on this too much, but do you agree with me that figuring out ways both within the family, within yourself, and within the company culture, that learning to celebrate success, wins, opportunities, excitements, great things helps to contribute to a better culture for the organization?
Oh, absolutely.
And for you?
I think, sometimes, people are sometimes focused on the outcome, the big picture, and you absolutely need to be. But what happens is because they get engaged, caught up in the big picture, they kind of lose the focus of the process to get there. And celebrating smaller victories, accomplishing smaller attainable goals that roll up to that, I think is so important because it keeps people engaged, motivated, and it doesn't allow procrastination and being anxious to set in to derail them. So I always think that you got to have the end goal in mind. That's very important. That's what you're aiming for. But you can't get lost in the process. You got to be focused every day, whatever you're doing at that moment as part of the process. Not worrying about what takes place tomorrow, what happened yesterday, right now. And it's the only day you have is right now. That's all you should be focused on, because what you're putting into that is like a mutual fund. It's just going to keep compounding until you retire, so to speak. In this case, whatever your end goal time frame is, that's what it's going to do. It's going to compound to where you want it to go by being focused on the process and not the outcome itself.
And it's interesting. I'll give you a live example of something that we did here within Vengreso. And our chief sales officer, Kurt Shaver, he and I were talking last week, and he said to me, "Yeah, I've got my 31-year anniversary coming up next week." And now I actually forgot about it. And what I should have done as a good leader is I should have wrote it down so I can remember the actual date. But we were in passing, we were talking, and I totally forgot. But we were on a call, happened to be on his anniversary, his wedding anniversary. And he said, "Hey, I've got my bride waiting for me. It's time for us to go out for our anniversary dinner." And I remembered, I was like, "Oh man, crap, I forgot." And we're talking about over 30 years worth of marriage, right? This is married young, 30 years. That's a huge accomplishment, right? 30 plus years. So it's very rare. And in my background in business, I spent 20 years, 19 and a half years in the corporate world. And then I went off on my own. And so now, we're building and growing, scaling Vengreso. So I've never, ever seen messaging come from senior leadership that ever was like, "Hey, happy 31-year anniversary, happy 50-year anniversary." It's like maybe a birthday, maybe a work anniversary, something like that. So I was sitting here and I was thinking, man, I want to figure out ways that we can celebrate success, because we're not together, and we have to figure out ways to celebrate success every single day and build a culture around communication, around sharing, around wrapping people together. So I decided I was going to send out a very simple happy anniversary message for 31 years. And it was actually pretty surprising. The response was like, "Whoa, 31 years. That's fantastic. That's amazing. Like, wow, congrats. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary." And just the replies kept coming in and everybody was sharing their happy anniversary. But like, those are the types of small things that if you think about it, no matter what, and this is not Kurt Shaver's situation at all, but let's just pretend as an example, Kurt was challenged, right? In terms of succeeding, in terms of being able to take himself to the next level. But those small types of successes that we as leaders can help our people with to help them get to the next level. I think leaders, they have a responsibility to help master the people that work for us, their inner critic, and to help shape and guide that. And people who work for us have a responsibility to help master our own inner critic as the leader of the organization. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that, the best leaders are the ones that are authentic and powered by example, because, if you're managing and telling people how, when, and why to do it, it doesn't work. I mean, people respond to what they see. And it's always about being authentic, who you are, not afraid to admit your mistakes. And it's just showing that you're a human being just like them. But yet you're committed to success. You're committed to a process that's going to be, best for the organization. And it's going to be a win-win for everybody. And I think that's the type of environment that companies really need to start leading from. And, and allowing people to focus on their strengths rather than the weaknesses. That it's okay if they make a mistake along the way. Making mistakes is part of this, being successful, as long as you don't keep repeating the same mistakes. But creating an environment that encourages, to be who you are, capitalize on your strengths, and be able to empower each other and give that balance, allow them to have that balance so they can have time with their family or take care of their health so they can have sustainable success long-term. They have to have the bigger picture in mind, not the short-term, the solution or the short-term gain, so to speak.
Yeah, gotcha. Other tips, advice, pieces of advice that you may have that we didn't cover in terms of creating prosperity within our own individual lives or within business? Anything that you think I didn't ask that I should be asking?
Well, I always say that again, you got to come from your authentic self. Be honest with who you are. If you're a salesperson and maybe for some reason, if things have been rough, maybe you're not a salesperson, or maybe you're doing something else and you should be a salesperson. So it's really important to be true to who you are. Stop, projecting something that you're not. Because when you find who you really are and you serve that purpose and align those strengths towards that purpose, you're going to add more value, and that's going to benefit everybody around you, the organization that you're with, or if you're in your own business, it'll be your business as well as your customers. So again, it's just being true to who you are, being authentic every step of the way with everybody around you.
I love it. Fantastic pieces of advice, Chris. I appreciate that. Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, if they want to connect with you, they want to reach out through LinkedIn or email or your website, tell us how they can get a hold of you.
Well, they can reach me at my website, Christopher, that's Christopher, Salem, like Salem, Massachusetts.com. You can reach me there. You can find out everything I do there. And also reach out to me on either LinkedIn or Facebook. It's Christopher Salem on LinkedIn, and then Chris Salem, my personal page on Facebook, or Christopher Salem, my professional page on Facebook. Either one is fine, and love to connect and share ideas and get to know you better.
And if they want to get access to the book, is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. There is also an Audible version, so you can get it through Audible. So if you don't have time to read, you can listen to it. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes to listen on Audible. But yes, Amazon would probably be the best place which most people buy the book from.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we put a link into the show notes for those that are listening in so that they can actually, if they're interested in the book, Master Your Inner Critic, that they'll be able to download the book there. And I always ask this question. I'm always interested in the very interesting, diverse ansers. Now, your heavy metal one was the hard rock.
I threw people for a loop.
That threw me for a loop. So you already got one. Let's see if we can get a bonus point here. The bonus round is your favorite all-time movie. What is it?
Well, I'm going to have to say, I'm a Sylvester Stallone fan. I love all his movies, the Rambo movies, but I'm going to say Rocky. The reason why, I'm not saying that from if you look at how the movie was made, it was like low budget, so to speak. It wasn't, the greatest acting in the world, but it was just the message. Here's a regular guy from the street, from Philadelphia, and he's got this skill to be a boxer. And it's, what I love about it, it's just so authentic and it's so real. That's why it connected with everybody back in the 1976, 77 when the movie came out. And to this day, it's a movie that people just can watch over and over again. And it doesn't matter if it's Rocky 1 or Rocky 1, 2, 3. I think those first 3 ones were probably the best. That it just shows an authentic person and how they chased their dream and how they went about it, and shows the struggles and obstacles that they were able to overcome along the way. So I always cite that as my favorite movie of all time.
I love it. I think we've had that one on the show once before. It was Rocky for the very similar reasons. Is the story of grit, story of struggle, and the raw, authentic individual just wanting to do something great, right? And the drive and the will. So I can definitely relate to that. I appreciate so much, Chris, that you joined us here on Selling with Social. Thank you, my friend, for joining us here on the program. I certainly appreciate it and hope to have you back soon another time around.
Absolutely, Mario. Pleasure to join you today. Thank you for having me.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges, along with Conversations with Phil with my friend and partner, Phil Gerbishak. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.